Great.
Hang on one second. I'm going to advance this slide here, Jill.
Sure.
There we go.
Thank you, Lynn, for both the welcome and the partnership, as always. It's been a great alliance that we've made with you guys. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jill Hoffman. I'm the Executive Director for the White River Alliance. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background if this is your first forum that you've joined us for, but we coordinate with Purdue on this, as well as many other partners, including a lot of research partners across the state. The aim with the forums is to try to make sure we're getting research out of the universities and into the realm of water professionals and community leaders, public officials, all that sort of stuff, so that we can make good policy based on science. So happy to be hosting conversations that both lift up the work of the annual Indiana Water Summit, but also stand alone on their own. So our past forums are listed here for you. But if you just go back real quick, they are here. We started them. We had a few of them around the first year of the summit in 2019, but the most recent ones that you see here include a wide range of things, from wetlands to PFAS, back to wetlands because it was such a challenge, flooding, water withdrawals, climate change, surface groundwater interactions. So if you want to stay abreast of what's going on in the larger water world, I encourage you to keep tracking us on these forums, and really appreciate all our speakers being here. Bill, if you go ahead to the next slide, just my last shout out, again, I mentioned that this work is tied to the Indiana Water Summit, which is an event we started about 7 years ago. To kind of collapse conversations about water across different sectors and across the state. So the one coming up this year is August 21st and 22nd. We actually sold out the summit last year, so this is a new venue for us. So if you haven't been, please join us for that big event where we try to take on water in the big picture of lots of different things. So we'll see you in August, hopefully. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who's going to introduce our speakers. And thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks, Jill, and welcome everybody. My name is Bill Blomquist. I also work with the White River Alliance, and happy to be with you all. So we're going to do today's presentation. Today's forum is going to happen in two halves, first hour, second hour. So I'm only going to introduce the round one speakers for now, because we have 6 presentations and it would be a bit much for you all to keep track of and remember. So we're going to do 3 and 3. The first, and one other just bit of logistics here is we're not going to do Q&A after each one of these. We're going to do 3 and then a Q&A, and then we'll do 3 more and a second round of Q&A. So these are the round one speakers, which we're delighted to have. They're going to hold to a tight 10 minutes each. So you'll be receiving information from them over the next 30 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A that'll take round out the first hour, and then we'll do 3 more presentations and Q&A after those. Please, I urge you, encourage you, beg you, whatever the right verb is, to put questions in the chat, regardless of which presentation. So as soon as you have a question, please type it in the chat, because I'll just be keeping track of those. And then when we get to our Q&A break after these 3 presenters, I'll gladly direct your questions to whoever the appropriate presenter or presenters are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first presenters. We're going to have some research, and then we're going to do some policy stuff. And then on the second round, we're going to do some more policy stuff, and then end up with another research project. So that's going to be the sort of the flow of things today. We're delighted to start off with some research that's been done at the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams at Grace College. And our presenters, we're happy to have Nate Bosch and Matt Burlingame, the director and the assistant director for research at that center. I will go ahead and start with them, but let me do introductions for the next 2 as well. So we're delighted to have Gabby Ghreichi, who's going to talk about recreational water quality standards in Indiana. and Alan Hurst from the Department of Natural Resources, who's going to talk about Indiana's water trails. So those are going to be our first three. With that, I'm going to take this particular screen down because Nate and Matt have some slides they want to share with you. So Nate, Matt, go ahead and put your presentation up and take it away. Thanks.
All right. You see the screen all right?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. So I want to start with a little bit of an overview on the Lilly Center for Lakes and Streams and what we do. We'll talk about 3 specific areas, and then we'll end with 2 specific projects that we'll go into a little bit more detail on. So I'll start, and then Matt will take the second half. So first off, our mission is making our lakes and streams here in Kosciuszko County, north central Indiana, clean, healthy, safe, and beautiful. We have a 3-prong approach that we go for with that, and I want to give some examples of each of those. It's research, education, and collaboration. And then I also want to mention right off the bat here, just thank you for the support of some organizations, even included here today, who are tuned into this. We started in 2007, and we would not be able to accomplish these things without some of the great partners that we have in our area and across the state. So first off, some specific examples of research. So in the summertime, we do weekly lake sampling across 16 lakes from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We have 14 stream sensors that we come alongside that do continuous flow monitoring available on our website to everybody. And we come alongside those with specific stream sampling then as well every 2 weeks or more during high flow events. We also partner with other organizations like the Watershed Foundation. We just started doing some stream monitoring for them as well. Algae toxin work, looking at the problems that can be, microcystins, axatoxin, 3 other toxins we've looked at as well for people and their pets. Work a lot with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management on that. We've looked at connections with zebra mussels and algae toxins, which is kind of interesting. Also a project on bald eagles with the EPA not too long ago. We've been looking at boating impacts. How do boats stir up the bottom sediment of our lakes under certain conditions? We've looked at E. coli at beaches as well as inflowing streams, public sewers around lakes. We've done some research on that, looking at how those might improve water quality in our lakes. Nutrient budgets and historical trends are 2 ongoing projects that Matt's working on right now here on our team that are not completed yet. Education, we just surpassed 70,000 K-12 students served. These are 70,000 unique student connections over the course of our history here at the Lilly Center. Field trips here, us going into schools, bringing kids outdoors, lots of different sorts of things. We want to raise the next generation of what we call water literate citizens here in our county and throughout our region. We received the Governor's Award a few years back for the top environmental education programs in Indiana. We're really proud about that and our team members who helped make that happen. Our program demand continues to grow. We fill up our field trip slots really quickly. In fact, we'll probably have all of our field trip slots filled up for the next school year before this school year is even done. And then I also want to mention the environmental professionals. We have a lot of environmental science students here at Grace College. We have 46 right now students working at the Lilly Center as paid interns. And so we have an opportunity to multiply our effort throughout Indiana as we send graduates out, as we'll do again this Saturday. In the area of collaboration, we work a lot with watershed groups in our area, lake associations. We did an economic impact study, which is one of the 2 projects that we're going to go into a little bit more depth on here shortly. I'll talk about that one. We also are working with the Indiana Department of Health to be a certified E. coli laboratory where we can pull in samples from other organizations as well to do those E. coli analyses. And what Matt's going to talk about, the project, this EPA property value forecasting tool, he's going to go into a little bit more depth in that towards the end of our time here. And then we've been working more recently with Purdue, looking at some of the algae toxin data that we have and satellite imagery, and using AI to try to match those two up. So see if we can potentially predict patterns in algae blooms on some of our lakes based on wavelengths of light that the satellites can decipher, and then know better how to avoid these problems in the future, hopefully for some of our incoming lakes. So let's go into the first of the two studies a little bit more in depth here. So first is a lake economic impact study. This we did a few years back, and we wanted to see, okay, from an environmental standpoint, we know it's important to be good stewards of the environment around us, and we have a lot of partners that do it because it's the right thing to do. But we also know there's going to be a certain segment of the population that's going to be more motivated if we can tie an economic value to our lakes. And so that's why we did this study. We had a student that was an environmental science student also working on his MBA at the same time. So he was a really good match to start to look at some of these business numbers. So we did surveying with local business owners all around our county to get a sense of what portion of their revenue every year comes from the lakes, such that if the lakes were to dry up, how much would their revenue go down each year? And so you can see two main categories. There are actually three. You've got the lake-related business, the lake-specific business, and the property tax. So those all together add up to $313 million every year coming into our county, Kosciuszko County, because of the presence of the lakes that we have in our county. So if we go into more specifics there, lake-related businesses, you see automobiles, gas, food and dining, construction, grocery stores would be something in here as well. These are businesses that are lake-related. So you don't take 100% of their sales every year and attribute it to the lake. But as we surveyed individual owners, we took certain percentages based on what the owners reported to us, what percentage of their annual sales are due to the lakes. So a lakefront restaurant, certain times of the year, really busy because of the lake. Other times of the year, maybe they would be doing about that same business regardless of if the lake was there or not. And then look at the next category, lake-specific businesses. These are ones that are more closely tied to our lakes, boat sales, manufacturing, those sorts of things. And then down at the bottom there, the property taxes, the 15 million. That is, we did a whole analysis on lakefront versus channel front versus lake view versus homes that are just scattered around the countryside here in our more rural county. And so we only included the portion of the value of those homes that was inflated due to them being on a lake, on a channel, or with a view of a lake. And so only that extra amount of value actually went into the property tax generation annually of $15 million per year. And so it's a pretty conservative estimate. All of these are conservative estimates, only based on the data we actually had from the owners. And you can see here what's at stake. That can go up or that can go down. As our lakes get cleaner, we expect more economic impact. As our lakes potentially would get dirtier, we would expect less economic impact. So now Matt's going to talk a little bit about the EPA property value forecasting tool.
All right, so this is a project that we collaborated with a couple PhDs, one from Appalachian State University and two from the EPA. And so we just published this in the Journal of the American Water Resources Association, and it's using benefit transfer to estimate housing value increases from improved water quality. And this takes the results of an existing economic benefit study for a specific location and then applies those results to estimate benefits of a similar policy or location. So one of our co-authors, Dennis, he developed a model a couple years ago for waterfront homes and non-waterfront homes within 500 meters of the water body. And so that's the model we base this on. We took baseline home value data from the county GIS folks, 9,500 homes. Again, those baseline home values. And we did that at 14 of our largest, most popular lakes. These are lakes, as Nate said, we've been collecting water quality data on for about 15 years on most of them. So we have Dept, and we use Dept from 2018 to 2020, 2021. And the figure here shows where those lakes are in the county and gives you kind of the average Secchi depths ranges for those years that we put the study. And so we wanted to model adjustments in property values for 1-inch and 12-inch improvements in water clarity. So this is a figure that our communications guy, Rusty, developed for us. And what we found was that a sustained 12-inch increase in water clarity could result in a $122 million increase in home values. And you can see on the graph there that it's really skewed by Lake Wawasee. It's the largest natural lake in Indiana, has the most homes around it. So that's going to really drive that $122 million increase. But if we look at the average increase per home, there's several lakes that are relatively similar to Wawasee. So James Lake came in, well, Wawasee was $19,000 per home. Lake James was $18,000 per home. Winona Lake was $14,000 per home. And then a few other of the homes were hung around about $12,000 of average increase per home. So if you average that across the lakes, it comes out to about $8.7 million per lake. But really what we wanted to demonstrate here is that caring for our lakes is not only benefits the ecosystem, but can have a positive economic impact on the community. We wanted to show residents that both private and public actions that lead to improvements in water quality could really impact local home values. So that's it for us. I think we're right on time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nate and Matt. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see not only this work being done, but the dimensions of it, where you're looking at the economic impact of water recreation, but also the economic impact of improved water quality. It's great to have both of those dimensions being studied. We're going to turn, and again, reminder, please post questions in the chat. I will direct them to Nate and Matt when we get to our Q&A break. Our next presenter is Gabby Ghreichi, who is a Recreational Water Quality Standards Coordinator in the Office of Water Quality at the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. Gabby, I understand you have some slides too that you're going to put up, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Yeah, bear with me 1 minute. I think, let me get this toolbar up here. Let me share. Okay. Sorry, almost there. Okay. Can you see that? Just making sure everyone can see.
Perfect.
Full screen and so you can hear me. Awesome. Well, thank you for the intro. So yeah, as Bill said, I'm with the IDEM in the Office of Water Quality. And so, you know, being a regulatory agency, water quality standards are kind of a big part of our kind of responsibility coming from the Clean Water Act. So I wanted to just give an overview of what we have in place right now in Indiana to protect for recreation. And so just really briefly for folks who may not be aware, so there are 3 kind of core components for water quality standards. So you have to have designated uses for your water body, and you can think of that as goals, you know, for the water body. And that can be like protecting aquatic life or recreation, as we're talking about today. And you have to have criteria to protect for those designated uses. And those can be numeric, like an actual number or, you know, concentration, or it can be a narrative criteria. So most states have, you know, statements in their rules for water quality standards that say, you know, waters have to be free from oil sheen or objectionable deposits. And then the last required component is anti-degradation, which we won't get into today, but it's sort of in place to prevent continual degradation of our water bodies. So now jumping into kind of what Indiana has kind of in place for recreation, you'll see some citations here because our water quality standards have to be kind of adopted into our code, the administrative code. So we're in the part called surface water use designations. And you'll see that it says, except as provided in subsection C, which is the wet weather limited use subcategory. We'll get to that in a little bit, so you keep that aside in your mind for now. But surface waters of the state are designated for full body contact recreation. So the key takeaway is that all our water bodies in Indiana are designated for this like primary contact or full body contact. So swimming, bathing, playing in the water, full immersion in the water. And I do want to point out that some states have tried to think about designating certain water bodies for secondary contact, for things like maybe fishing or some boating activities where it might be a smaller risk, to ingest, water and feel sick. But we have not gone down that road in Indiana. So it's just an interesting part of this, that everything is designated for full body contact. And so we're now kind of going to the main part of where the standards located in our rule, the minimum surface water quality standards. So this is kind of the intro part that sets up like what our criteria are to protect for recreation. But I just wanted to point out that the recreational season is actually defined in our rule and code. So it's from April through October inclusive. And so the criteria you're about to see only apply during the recreational season. And so this is our criteria for recreation. I thought this is in a table format, so I don't want to post just the code language on the slide. So you can see that even just by looking at this, like there are numbers on here. So we do have numeric criteria for recreation, and the sort of indicator is E. coli. As that's already been mentioned in the previous presentation. So that's sort of our predictor for gastrointestinal illnesses, that could happen if there's too much, fecal matter in the water. And we have a monthly limit and a daily kind of limit for this. So, the water body, there's a 125 colony forming units per 100 milliliter monthly geometric mean standard for E. coli. And we really use this number for our assessment and monitoring programs to figure out, are we really meeting our full body contact designated use? And then we do have this daily maximum number, this 235 colony forming units per 100 milliliters. And this drives a lot of our permitting program or limits and our sanitary, wastewater permits. But you'll see there in bold at the bottom, it says a single sample is used for making beach closure and notification decisions. So a lot of the coastal, like Lake Michigan programs and other lakes within Indiana and other programs really use this 235 number as kind of a beach action, value or level. And some beach managers might decide to close the beach if, there's a sample that is above the 235 number. And so you might be wondering, like, where do these numbers come from? Does IDEM come up with them? And the short answer is it comes from EPA's criteria recommendations. And this goes all the way back to the Clean Water Act. So EPA is required, to develop scientifically defensible criteria. And we follow like when those come out. And these are not only for recreation, but aquatic life too. And so we have to look and figure out, like, should we consider adopting those into our rules, into our water quality standards? And the numbers that you just saw over here in the table, those were approved into our rule and approved by EPA in 2008. So they have been there for a little bit, and they are technically based on the big sort of 1986 publication, EPA's publication of recreational criteria. And these numbers really come from correlational studies that were done between, gastrointestinal illness rates in the water, like from swimmers or people recreating, and looking at what the levels were of fecal bacteria in the water. And so I do want to mention, as we're talking about recreation, so as many of you know, we have a fair number of combined sewer overflow communities in Indiana. And, unfortunately, because of the way our cities and towns were designed, a long time ago, during rain events, raw sewage and stormwater can combine, into a single pipe and enter our waterways. But our CSO communities are required to create and implement what's called a long-term control plan to dramatically reduce these discharges of raw sewage. And these are massive projects. Some communities are spending, millions of dollars on this. I think a few of you are familiar with the Dig Indy project. So that's part of Indianapolis's long-term control plan to really dramatically reduce, their overflow events. And so even after completing these massive projects, a lot of communities are still going to have residual discharges from combined sewers. So because of that tough reality, there is a process under state regulations that allow communities to go through what's called a use attainability analysis. And this is a formal kind of process, but they have to provide a lot of justification to show that it may not be possible to meet the full body contact recreational use at all times of the year. And so I think you heard me say earlier, all our water bodies are designated for full body contact, except for the wet weather limited use designation. So there is a part in our code, with this subcategory, but this only applies to CSO communities. But it does allow for certain, stream reaches that have been identified, and the justification has been provided for this, where there is a suspension of that full body immersion designated use for a period of time not to exceed 4 days after the date the overflow discharge ends. So it's essentially saying that full body designated use does not apply during that, window of time. And I just wanted to bring this up. It's a little bit newer, and we've only had 2 CSO communities apply to get this, coverage, Indianapolis and Fort Wayne. And this is just an example where you can see for Indianapolis, like what stream reaches would get coverage for this after they're done, with their full kind of long-term control projects. So really quickly for the monitoring side, IDEM does monitor for compliance with our E. coli criteria. One of our major sampling programs is the probabilistic sampling program, where they rotate around like the 9 major basins in Indiana. So you can see like this summer, they're focusing on the upper Wabash River Basin. But in addition to getting the chemistry and habitat, biology they usually do, our field crews do go out once each week for 5 consecutive weeks during that recreational season to, monitor for E. coli. And so the sampling is designed specifically, to be able to compare against that monthly geometric mean of 125 per 100 milliliters. And so this sampling that comes from this really does serve as the basis for how IDEM lists streams for impaired, recreational use are added to the 303D list. And then lastly, just as someone already kind of mentioned, toxins, blue-green algae toxins. So this is a little bit outside of E. coli for a second, but I just want people to be aware, since it really does impact recreation, that IDEM does work with DNR and IDOH to sample some of the DNR beaches and the Fort Harrison Dog Park over the summer for 4 different kinds of blue-green algae toxins. And there's a website I encourage people to go to, or link, and you can, keep track weekly on, during the summer on those lakes and how those are doing. And DNR posts beach advisory signs if the toxin level is over a certain threshold. So it's a great resource. And one thing that's interesting is these thresholds are not in our code. So these are not official water quality standards, adopted yet, but still really important, kind of program to protect for recreational use. And so that's, I know that was a lot very quickly, but this is just a summary slide of Indiana's recreational water quality standards. The key takeaway is that everything is designated for full body contact recreation. And we do have numeric values for E. coli that is meant to protect for the primary contact recreation. So thank you for listening. My contact info is here, and our water quality standards webpage. And there's an option now to put your email into if you want to stay up to date to any changes or big rulemakings related to water quality standards. So thank you.
Gabby, thank you so much. And thanks especially for pointing people to where they can find more resources or stay in touch. That's super helpful, especially when you have so much information to share. We really appreciate it. Now, people may know a pond or a lake or someplace close by where they live, but if they're interested in recreating on the water, they may want to know where else they can go. So Alan Hurst is Trails Coordinator with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, and Alan is going to tell us about Indiana's water trails. Alan, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Bill. Let me get screen shared up here. We're going to be jumping back and forth between PowerPoints and websites. All right, so my name is Alan Hurst. I'm a Trails Coordinator with the Indiana DNR. Specifically, I'm with the Community Grants and Trails section and the Division of State Parks. And my primary responsibility and my role is to promote outdoor recreation and help point people to resources, whether that's informative or financial assistance when available. So first and foremost, we do have a DNR Waters Trail page. I don't believe it has a vanity link, but if you just Google Water Trails Indiana, you'll likely come here. And this is just an overview of all what you need to know and where to go in Indiana. So it'll have things like river rights and usage, what's public water, what's private water, etiquette, safety, paddling organizations, and then also where to go. And I'll get into this where to paddle interactive map here shortly. But just as an example of a quick click through, we click on the water trail organizations. It's broken down by statewide, regional, local, national, and then also specific river and environmental organizations. So sure enough, there's White River Alliance there. So if you're interested and want to get involved, here are the links and the resources to do so. To jump back into the PowerPoint here, the main resource I wanted to kind of promote today is the Where to Paddle interactive map. And this does have a vanity link. It is on.in.gov/where to paddle, or you can Google Where to Paddle Indiana. And what this is, it is an interactive map consolidating a lot of different databases between different divisions, different agencies, both at the state and federal level. There's state park information, Fish and Wildlife, Division of Water, USGS here. And it just consolidates all water trail amenities known in the state. So in this outmost view, you have canoe and kayak rentals and streamside camping locations. If you click on any one of these, it will provide more information, the name of the place and a website where you can get more information about rates, what services are available, what watercraft. And as you zoom in, more amenities will start populating the map. So not only do we have the outfitters and streamside camping locations, we have all the public access sites that the state is aware of in the state, low head dams, whether they're fully intact or partials. So you know to avoid those, don't ever try to go over them. USGS stream gauges. And when you start getting real close, zooming in, you'll also start to get river miles. So this is a great tool to help plan out a good distance to paddle for yourself. So if you're ever planning, as in a quick example, this is the Blue River. If you wanted to go from the Blue River Chapel access site, and there's more information when you click on it, the type of launch it is, who it's managed by, pictures when they're available. And if you wanted to paddle down to the Old Iron Bridge, you can look at these river miles. So from 11 to mileage 3, it's an 8-mile trip. Another good point of this is it pulls in USGS information. So if you're curious where the river level is at, right now the Blue River in this area is at 3.5 or about 3 1/3 feet. And the picture there just kind of shows you a weak snapshot of where the water level is at. So you can see it kind of looks like it just got rain in the past couple of days. One thing it doesn't really give you is context. Is that really high? Is that really low? It just shows you that week. But on this Where to Paddle map up at the top, you have useful links to the water trails page, water trail safety. But a really great one is this USGS stream flow map. And this shows you all the gauges in the state. And if you look down here, it gives you a legend of whether it's high or low. So if you find a red or a maroon colored dot, it's likely very low. You're going to be scraping or may have to get out of your canoe or kayak and carry it a little bit. Or if it's blue or black, the water levels are very high and it would be extremely ill-advised to get out on the water. So in the case of what I just looked at on the Blue River, there it is, 3.5 feet. And yes, that is in the normal range and likely very fine to go out for a paddle. So not only did I just kind of want to showcase this as a planning and resource tool, but also to kind of let the audience know is this map works best when all water trail amenities are available. I work in central office in Indianapolis, and as much as I get out in the field, I can't possibly know everything. So by all means, if there are water trail amenities out there that I am unaware of that are not on this map, please reach out and let me know. My contact information is available on that map, and I'll have it at the end here. But I'm looking to add more. The more is out there, the more useful it is. That said, there are some kind of bars or criteria we look for before adding these into our databases. For instance, with the access sites, there's 4 criteria, which are they must be open to the public, they must have designated parking, so we're not looking for kind of street side parking locations. They must be signed as an access site or have access site signage just to give people confidence that they know they are in the right place. And there must be a managing entity that maintains the site. So we're not advertising anything that turns into a giant trash dump if nobody's maintaining it. For me to get access sites added into the database, the main thing I'm looking for there is it needs to have a web presence, whether that's a dedicated web page or a Facebook page, just something that people can click through to learn more information or find out if they're temporarily closed. Any advisements is just useful to have. And lastly, for streamside camping, the 2 criteria I'm looking for is A, it needs to be a permanent location. Mostly these are going to be campgrounds, but some cities and municipalities have started to add free to use camping spots. For instance, this picture here is on the Wabash River in Wabash County, where they have added a nice camp spot right on the Wabash River where you can get out and set up safely. While sandbars and things on navigable rivers that are beneath the ordinary high water mark could be some great spots overnight camp, those are temporary in nature and not what we're looking to add to this map. So for the audience, please let me know if there is something that where to paddle map is missing. The other thing I wanted to overview with my time is the public access site program. It is the premier program that gives people in the state of Indiana access to our waters. The program is overseen by the Division of Fish and Wildlife. At this point, they have about 450 access sites across the state, and those are on that Where to Paddle map. They have a program goal of having an access site every 10 miles on a navigable waterway. And what that is, that's just pretty much public use water is a navigable waterway. And I'll touch on that a little bit more here in a second. Their funding primarily comes from fishing and hunting licenses. They will use that state money and they will match it with the Federal Sport, Fish, and Wildlife Restoration Fund. I believe it's a 25% state, 75% federal match, and that's what pays for their entire program. The reason I bring this up is while the Division of Fish and Wildlife is very aware of paddle sports, canoe, kayaking, their primary concern and their prioritization is to increase fishing access, and that's simply because that's what pays for their funding. Just examples of some new sites they've constructed in the past year or two. Knightstown public access site on the Big Blue River in Rush County, the Shelby access site pictured here on the Kankakee, the Gas City access site on the Missinawa, and then the White Bridge and on the Wabash River in Wells County. Not only did I want to kind of highlight this program as is what gives most people access to the water, but also to let people know that, are you looking to have an access site constructed in your community? The program nowadays is not looking so much into land acquisition as they are working with partners who already own land adjacent to navigable rivers. And just very quickly, I wanted to show there is a list online if you Google navigable rivers that show all the navigable rivers in the state. You can do by county or by waterway. So by waterway, for instance, we'll go down the White River. And you will see that it's navigable from the junction with the Wabash River into it forks into the east and west. And on the west fork here, it's navigable for 277 river miles to Smithfield. So yeah, the Division of Fish and Wildlife is looking to work with partners who own land adjacent to navigable waterways. So whether you're a city, a county, a park, or even a land trust, by all means, reach out to this program if you want to have an access site constructed on those properties. The conditions of those, it needs to be for public use and you cannot charge to use those access sites. If you are interested or want to learn more about that, they do have a website kind of overviewing that program, and they do have contacts both in the north and the south there. And of course, my contact information is there, email and number. By all means, reach out to me. And that's all I got here for you.
Alan, thank you so much. Again, and thanks also for pointing people to additional resources. But I want to follow up on just one thing because we had a question in the chat. And I'll go to all of the questions, but this one, you said that people should submit updates, corrections, additions. And one of the questions was simply how. Can you just If
Of
you could
course, email
you-
me.
Okay.
On that, where to
People
cattle
should
map.
contact you directly if they have
Yes,
updates
please.
or corrections or additions. Okay. All right. Very, very good. In that case, I'm going to go back up to the top, and we've had questions for each of our presenters. If you are still thinking of a question, or if a question comes to mind, please by all means go ahead and enter it in the chat, because I'll keep looking. But I'm going to go back to Nate and Matt. I'm going to exercise moderator's prerogative and ask a real quick question myself, and then get to the two that were posted. One is Matt. Just remind people, if they once knew this, or inform people if they didn't know it, what's a Secchi depth?
Secchi depth is a way we measure water clarity in a lake. So it's a round disc. It's about 20 centimeters in diameter, and it has alternating quadrants of black and white. So it's, like a black piece of pie, a white piece of pie, black piece of pie, white piece of pie, in quarters. And we lower that down into the lake on the shady side of the boat. And once that disc kind of disappears, or we can't tell the difference between the black sections and the white sections, then that's the Secchi depth, or basically water clarity level.
Great.
So it's,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's a very direct way of measuring water clarity. When you can't see through it down to see the disc anymore, that's the depth of the clarity. Thank you. So also for you and Nate, we had a question from somebody asking about LaGrange County. You guys obviously focus on Kosciuszko. That's where you're located. Somebody asked whether there's anybody doing similar kinds of assessments, either of recreation impact or water clarity, or any of that kind of research in other areas such as LaGrange.
not that I'm aware of. We're pretty unique here in Kosciuszko County at the Lilly Center. Not a lot of programs like us around, but as far as I know, there isn't in LaGrange. So
okay, all right. So we need the Lilly Center annex in our other Lake District counties around the state. There you go. You can pitch them for more money for that. And then a question from someone who is located on Lake Lemon in southern or south central Indiana, and that was just about assessing water quality factors other than clarity. So clarity is one of the things that you assess, but this person attending the forum wanted to know about, let me just scroll back up to the question so I make sure I get it. How do you control for factors that are not related to water clarity when you're assessing impacts on property values? So in a project like the one that you did with colleagues that got published in JAWRA, how do you know what to attribute to water clarity and what to sort of think might be other factors?
That's a good question. I know in some of the models they use, they had other factors that they would add in. So like location. So they had one of the parameters for the model. They put in 1 for Midwest and 0 for other locations in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So they had some other, I guess, parameters that they, based on other models that they had developed, they would adjust the model accordingly to those parameters. I'm not sure if that's answering the question or not. I will say I am not an economist, so
right. You had one you were working with, and they probably did that.
Well, I had 3 that we were working
variables.
with. So
yeah.
I did want to say, Nate wanted me to throw out there that both the economic impact study that he talked about and then the benefit transfer paper that I talked about, both those full papers are on our website at lakes.grace.edu under original research is what that's under on our website. So you can find those papers.
So thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. And there may be other questions for you, but I'm going to turn to Gabby for now, because Gabby, there were some questions for you as well. And one of them was about, if the season is April through October, why is beach monitoring over only from Memorial Day to Labor Day? And you should feel free to pull the jurisdictional card and say it's DNR's beaches, not yours. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a good observation. Yeah, because in rule, April through October, almost like a conservative view, which is good, for our standards. I think that it sadly might be a funding issue in a way, because there was some money, I think, available through a Clean Water Act program to really get, do some algotoxin testing. So I think they really were trying to focus on where they could for like when people are going, swimming. And since those beaches are open Memorial Day to Labor Day. So I think that's why they're only doing it right now, but I think that's a good point. And I think I'll definitely pass that along to our, the program staff, because I think they would probably like to as well. If we could do it later in the season. I will just add, I do think they're going to go in a week or two. So I know they are able to take a few samples ahead of the season, or people actually going, but yeah, that's a good point.
Appreciate that. We had a question, and I'm going to pose half of it to you, Gabby, and half of it to Alan. And the question was about when we have bridge work being done over a stream or river that's being used for recreation. And part of this is a water quality standard, and then part of this is a recreator safety question. And the water quality question is, what do we do about debris, construction debris, demolition debris, et cetera, that ends up in a recreational water? Is there any monitoring for that? Do we have criteria for things like that? That's the half for you. And then Alan was the Lowhead Dam safety question regarding recreators and who monitors that, and what kind of action does anybody take to make sure recreator safety is maintained. So Gabby, the quality question for you. Alan, the safety question for you. Gabby, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So on the water quality side, this is where kind of the narrative standards are kind of powerful in a way. So even though we don't have obviously like a number for this, but we have a standards and rule, that you can't have debris actually, and I'm forgetting all the terms, but there's a whole kind of slew of like things really floating in the water, that are going to even cause an aesthetic issue, or like, nuisance algae, or, kind of cause problems. And so when there are projects for even Lowhead dams actually as well, and bigger ones, there has to be like we call it a 401 permit. Also going back to the Clean Water Act, and there are like parameters in that permit kind of to help ensure how you're going to do this project, to basically make sure you're not going to allow kind of debris or cleanup and things like that. And then if there's a major issue like in a project, and I may be talking about even oil or grease, or something happens and people release it, I mean, that's technically a spill, because you are kind of it's an excursion over our narrative, water quality standards, and that's supposed to like go to the spill line. So that's where I think people think, oh, there's not much to a narrative statement, in rule, there's no number, but that's sort of what's in place, and can really, we can go back to that for cleanups, or say you need to get that, out of the water. I hope that somewhat answers that part, but we get involved with the Lowhead dams as well, but I can let Alan talk about that too.
All right. Alan, I'm going to hold your half of the question just for a moment, because I got a couple for you. So, So Gabby, let me just ask one other quick question to you, and then we're going to go over to Alan. And it's a little bit of a in the weeds question, but it's one I'm sure you're well familiar with, and maybe can summarize well for the audience. E. coli as a water quality indicator has sometimes come under question. It's the most commonly used one, so I'm not saying it shouldn't be used. It's the best known, but given the number of sources of E. coli and the toxicity associated with it, and so forth and so on, there are other water quality indicators out there. What can you tell people about why we use E. coli, and in connection with that, just maybe answer also the question about testing lag, like, the water quality at this place was good yesterday, or I mean, how long does it take for our monitoring and sampling to catch up with our water quality at the moment somebody might want to be recreating there?
Yeah, so the really, you know, E. coli, so we use it as the most common. And right now, like with the most kind of recent, the most up-to-date like kind of publication out there, even from EPA, E. coli is the main one for, you know, freshwater. So I think it's the kind of best science available right now to say it's our best predictor for gastrointestinal illness. But I will say, not to get way too in the weeds, but EPA is supposed to review this criteria like every 5 years. And there is some research and conversations going on about things like coliphage or other viruses or other indicators that maybe are being missed with E. coli or might be better, or other techniques that might be better. So I think we might hear about that a little more actually in the next coming years. So that's definitely true. I think E. coli is probably the best we have that people know how to sample for. And, you know, we have lab methods for that. So that's sort of where we're at. But I think there's a lot of research going on. We might see a change. And I think that our assessment folks have been pushed or asked before about if you looked into virus or the other kind of techniques. I don't know of other states that are doing that quite yet. And then to the other question too, I'm trying to remember for E. coli for our lab or field crew, if it might be, I mean, it's a couple of days, you know, it takes time to get the results back. It might be the 24 or 96-hour test, or once they count and we get the results. And what's really hard with E. coli, it's so dependent on rain or what's happening. Like you said, it could be good yesterday. And then it depends when you sample. And that's why our field crews go, you know, it's tough because they might only be able to go this 1 month or like depending on our resources, but it was at the best time to go because it's dry. You know, we want to kind of figure out how bad it is, you know, when it's raining or there's runoff. And so it's a difficult, there is a lag time or problem. So it's like doing the best we can with the number of staff that can go and hit those every week to get a representative kind of sample for the month.
That's a good answer for people to know. Thank you, Gabby. I'm going to switch over to Alan here. A couple of questions for you, Alan. First is the second half of the question to Gabby, and that's just about recreator safety, low head dams, and just how do we keep track of those and notify people, warn people, et cetera.
Gotcha. In my role, I mostly work on the promoting the awareness about and the safety behind low head dams. So we have a webpage dedicated entirely to that, where they are in the state. The Division of Water does a great job. They have that access that we pull into for the Where to Pedal map where they are. And they've also looked into like who actually owns these dams. I do not know if there is a statewide standard for signing and warning people about actually getting it out on the water to don't try to go over these. Mostly my realm is just public awareness of putting it out there to stay away from them. They present a hazard.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody asked if you have site usage data for your trail site.
For the Where to Pedal map, I do see that data. I just pulled it up when I saw that question. In the past 30 days, an average of 75 views a day, and I'll occasionally look at that. Obviously, as we get into the paddling season, that will increase or decrease depending on what time of season it is. But yeah, as of right now, 75 views a day.
Great. We had someone who asked about stream stretches being designated as navigable or non-navigable, and sort of when, how often do you guys sort of revisit those designations and ever change them?
I am not aware of any process or plans to change the navigable designations. A bit of historical context: the way that they got those designations is there was proof that the rivers, streams, creeks, whatever water trail was used by the public for commerce at the time of Indiana statehood. That's how those designations happened. There is a mechanism to declare a new water trail navigable, but it is a very high standard involving a lot of grassroots. I believe it goes to the legislature. I may be wrong on that. It's a very involved process. There are also other designations that can be met as well. There's a recreational river designation that's available, which would make the water available for public loot or for public use, but then the land would remain private. So
Yeah.
there are different levels of designations, each requiring their own steps that you'd have to go through.
Yeah, and I think there's like a stretch of the lower blue that has that designation, that recreational river designation. And then and then we're going to take a very, very short break, let people get away from their screens for 5 minutes, and then come back for our next set of presenters. Oh, it looks like Maggie, one of our attendees, just posted a response to the question I was going to ask. Alan, I'll ask it anyway. 50 different species found on the eel. In the vicinity of a place where a fish ladder and fish trap had been installed. Do you know anything about the study of that stretch of the eel around Stockdale Mill and Dam?
Unfortunately, I do not myself know
Okay.
that information, but I would know the contacts to reach out to if you
All right.
did want to, or I'd have to find out from Fish and Wildlife.
Right, and
who
it
that
sounds like
contact is.
it sounds like one of our attendees, Maggie, had a lead on that she has posted. So thank you, Maggie, for doing that. All right, sorry, we'll sneak in one more if you can do it real quick. Matt or Nate, any studies or monitoring currently being done on Indiana lakes regarding the effects of wake boats or wake surfing on shoreline erosion or dock damage?
Okay, I was actually just replying to that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we did a study a couple years ago up, I think we did on Lake Wawasee, but we looked at several different types of boats at several different speeds and what effect that had on disturbing the substrate and resuspending nutrients into the water column. And didn't really, that was before I came here, but we really didn't look at impact to the shoreline or to docks or anything like that. But what we found was that if you're boating in at least 10 feet of water, very minimal impact to the substrate and resuspending nutrients. We had a meeting the other day, Jeremy, our assistant director, and Nate with a group from Lake Latonka over in Marshall County, I think, to talk about this. And Jeremy had a really good paper from, I think it was Michigan, that they looked at more specifically what this person is asking about with in regards to shoreline erosion and impacts on shoreline.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Bill, I could probably get that from Jeremy at some point. What would be a good way to get that?
If you do find something that's like a link that people could follow, we can send it out to the attendees. If you get a chance to do that, Matt, I'm sure it would be appreciated.
Okay. And again, the study that I'm talking about that we did is also on our website,
right?
Our research page. So yeah,
the Lilly Center website is full of really great information, in my opinion. So thanks for that. All right, everybody, stand up, step away from your screen. 5 minutes max, though. We're going to start round 2 in 5 minutes. So my computer says it's 12:29. We'll see you at 12:34 if you're Central Time. That's 11:29 and 11:34. Thank you, everybody. All right, welcome back, everybody. I have I'm going to ask a quick favor of Lynn.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Lynn, it occurred to me something that I should them. If I can get this to advance, there we go. So our next three presentations are by Katherine Couch, Senior Sustainability Manager at Hamilton County Tourism, and she's going to share from a different perspective. Here we have one of our local governments in Indiana that is making recreation and the river, in their case, the White River, of a centerpiece of economic development, investing not just financially, but in terms of staff time for outreach and communication and so forth. So we're going to talk about why they're doing that. We have a project to hear about that is up on Lake Michigan and the Trail Creek area up there, which is a popular recreation destination. And Steve Stanford from Michigan City Sanitary District and Melina Blanc from Delta Institute are going to tell us about a green infrastructure project there that has some impacts, positive impacts on the recreation opportunities there. And then Jonathan Day, as I said, we're going to open with a research project, end with a research project. Jonathan Day and colleagues at Purdue were looking out into the future and what can we foresee as far as climate change impacts on outdoor recreation. So we'll be hearing from that shortly. I'm going to take my screen back down. I'm going to hand it off to Katherine, who is going to start off round two. Katherine, 10 minutes, go.
All right. I think I'm good. Can you see that?
Sure can. Looks great.
Okay, awesome. Glad to be here. I'm Katherine Couch. Like was just said, I'm the Senior Sustainability Manager at Hamilton County Tourism. And I'm here to talk about community development and water recreation, and specifically Discover White River. So I wanted to just start with some background. Let me see. All right, there we go. I wanted to start some background of just how tourism works, because before I got into this industry, I didn't know. I come from more of an education and climate action background, so I wanted to make sure we have sort of the basics here. Like I said, I work for Visit Hamilton County, or Hamilton County Tourism. We're funded through hotel taxes, so our job is really to promote the county and get heads and beds, and that's how we sustain our own organization, but also how we can then in turn, I'll talk about that more in a minute, invest back into the county. But our partners in promoting the county are really hotels. We have over 40 in the county, in Hamilton County, which is just north of Indianapolis, if you're not familiar with the area. We have lots of sports venues. One of the biggest ones is Grand Park in Westfield. We have Ruoff Music Center. We have lots of meeting spaces. Attractions, we have Conner Prairie, the Nickel Plate Express train ride, a lot of restaurants. Events and festivals would include Carmel's Chris Kindlemark, Spark Fishers, and International Arts Festival. We have some night floats. We have lots of things going on in the county throughout the year, and tourism is involved in promoting all of those events and trying to get more visitors to come. But at the same time, we really want to make sure that Hamilton County is a great place to live and not just to visit. So we, with that, want to acknowledge that fundamental truth that without a healthy environment, we're not going to have a tourism economy, right? And we're not going to have a healthy society. So we know that tourism, and especially over-tourism, too many people coming to a location, can have a negative impact on our natural environment. So we recognize that we have a responsibility to mitigate that impact and to steward our natural environment. I wanted to point out we're not the only people who are doing this. So especially in the face of climate change, more people and especially more tourism organizations are starting to think about this. How do we steward our natural environment? Often it's called destination stewardship or regenerative tourism. For us, we've been doing this work for a while, and we've just kind of recently put it into this overall umbrella of Inspire Hamilton County to sort of organize the work under people, place, planet, and prosperity. We're primarily communicators, and who doesn't love a little alliteration along the way there? But one prime example of this is of us giving back and being interested in stewardship. That's really what led us to get involved in the White River Vision Plan. So this is trying to do the background here if you're not from the area, right? So the White River is really one of the key natural resources of our region of central Indiana. It's a foundational for quality of life, whether you're visiting or whether you're living here long term. So I think, again, with that background, saying that it's critical that tourism invest in stewardship of that critical resource. So if you're not familiar with the plan, it covers 58 miles of the West Fork of the White River, which is shown here, flowing through Hamilton and Marion counties. This plan was really a guide for how do we take care of the river into the future. And many, many partners came together to form this plan. And I do not have time to list them all, so forgive me, but I am not taking full credit for this plan. It was many, many partners. I'm just trying to keep surface level knowledge here so we can keep going. But alongside Visit Indy, and again, many partners, Hamilton County Tourism helped convene the community to collect their thoughts and opinions and distill all of that down into the principles of this plan. Again, lots of information on this slide. I'm not going to read it to you. I'll post a link to the vision plan so that people who are interested and not familiar can go back in and learn more in depth. But basically all of that input, community input from experts, from citizens in the area, was distilled down into these principles, which were then further organized under these pillars, right? So you have the pillar of environment with 3 principles under that, activation, 3 principles under that, and equity, really saying, okay, what are we going to do? What could we do to make sure the river is a beautiful, lovely, and healthy river into the future? And then with that, we really started to think too, okay, after the plan has already been published, what is tourism's role now? How does tourism fit into those pillars and principles? And the expertise that tourism brings is that we're good at storytelling and information sharing. So with Visit Indy, and again, some other support, we created Discover White River, which is a website. Again, I'll put the link in the chat later. And we really wanted this website to be a hub of information sharing and a lasting home for storytelling about the White River, for progress updates of what has been done under the principles of the plan, and then also for event sharing. And so there's a calendar of events on this website, and it's actually one of our most visited pages, which is awesome because we wanted this website to be a place to lift up all of the people who are doing great work on the river and all of the places that you can visit to engage with the river. And I think kind of one of the guiding principles in creating this website was that we want people to experience the river so that they can love the river, right? Recreate on it, love it, and then ultimately be part of its protection and stewardship. And then really with this, I love this picture. That's why I got distracted. So this was from a night float. It was before the night, but that we did with Friends of the White River last summer. You can see their fun floats there. Very enjoyable float down the river that day. But we really think that destinations should be investing in the experts who are already doing the work on the river, invest in nature and the people who have been stewarding it for a long time. So for us in Hamilton County, just a few examples of that are our parks. We have 4 park systems that own property along the river: Noblesville, Carmel, Fishers, and then the Hamilton County parks as well. Friends of the White River, like I said, shown here in this picture, they are engaged in some of the river safety work that we were talking about, public engagement, recreation, riverbank restoration, and they've been doing that work for a long time. Also White River Alliance, of course, and they have the science and the policy and the education side of things going on. And most recently, we've also been working with our Soil and Water Conservation District and working to really amplify and get the word out about the work that they're doing with invasive species removal, which is good for the river, but also for, you know, the ecosystem throughout the whole county and region as well. So I think just to kind of recap that, these are some of the people that are doing that awesome work and what can we offer to them. We're really good at amplifying messaging. So we're offering some social media training to our Soil and Water Conservation District. Then we also, through the Discover White River brand, promote out, again, amplify the events and messaging of our other partners that are doing work on the river. And then also we're really good at connection work. So we're at this interesting nexus of government and economic development and nonprofit and business. And so when we can do a connection to say, hey, this person has money and you need money, like that is awesome. Or just this person has technical skills and you need to know about this technical aspect of the river before you build next to it, or what be the case. And again, what's really cool is that we've partnered with Visit Indy on this. And so we're able to take more of a regional approach than just a one county approach, which is more accurate to how a river works, right? Is it doesn't recognize county boundaries. And it's cool to be able to work beyond that for us. And I am really impressed by time. Hopefully I haven't talked too fast here. All right, I've got one more slide. I just wanted to show, this is our latest sort of promotion of the river and of the attractions, parks, right? All the places along the river. So we have a Discover White River Rewards Pass that's going on throughout the summer, through at the end of October, actually. And I encourage you to scan the link if you're interested. If you're in the area, please visit some of our parks. Totally free. You check in on the website and say that you're there, you gain points, and then you can redeem those points for prizes. And we're going to do some different promotions throughout the summer as well. But we're really excited about these different ways to promote the river, get people to experience the river, love it, and take care of it. That's all I have for now.
Perfect. Katherine, thank you so much. We will have some questions for you later. And thanks for also being willing to post some resources in the chat. That's a big help too. Appreciate it. I now get to turn to Steve Stanford and Melina Blanc, who are going to tell us about a project that is, it has multiple purposes, and one of its effects is to enhance the recreational attractiveness of a site up on the Lake Michigan coastal area. So Steve, I think you're going first. Is that correct?
I will go first, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, Melina's going
I'll
first.
go first. Okay. All right. Very good.
Let me share my screen.
Yes, please go ahead and share your screen, and then we will, you can take it away. Thanks. Looks great.
Yep. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Yep.
it looks
Okay.
perfect.
Perfect. So let me just over on my screen. So thank you very much. I will be presenting with Steve Stanford today. He's an operation manager at the Michigan City Sanitary District, and I'm Melina Blanc. I'm working at Delta Institute, living here from a few years already, but I'm French, as you can all tell with my little French accent. Delta is an environmental 501c3 nonprofit, and we are based in Chicago. We partner with Michigan City Sanitary District to make a stormwater ecological restorations and recreation improvement at Michigan City, Cheney. And that's what we're going to speak about today. So the project is located in Michigan City, as you can see in the red polygon on Cheney, with drainage areas highlighted in red as well in this map. Cheney flow into Trail Creek, and Trail Creek is a significant tributary that ultimately fed into Lake Michigan. And so the story of Cheney really started back in 1939, when it was originally converted into from a natural stream to a pipe storm sewer system and channel. And just nearby, there was an unofficial dump site that was operated from 1965 to, I believe, 1972, when it was closed, covered by sand, and eventually overtaken by plant. In 2013, we had a strong storm event that overloaded the Cheney Channel and the Trail Creek and exposed all the old trash from this unofficial dump site. And as a response, Michigan City initiated immediate repairs, and then this prompted to several partners to consider a more long-term solutions to enhance the situations there. Here we go. So Cheney at that time was the primary source of stormwater-related pollution that ended up in Trail Creek. And so the Trail Creek Watershed Management Plan identified this as a priority areas of concern. And that's how we ended up doing these awesome projects on this 40-acre site that is surrounded by wetland. It received funding from the Environmental Protection Agency, from National Fish and Wildlife Foundations, for the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, and of course, some matching fund from Michigan City. And the projects took place from October 2017 to December 2020. We had a lot of collaborations with multiple partners doing these projects. Delta was in charge of projects management and community engagements. Michigan City Sanitary District was in charge of on-site management. We worked also with the Alliance for the Great Lakes for community engagement, and have a lot of subcontractors for all the engineering work, construction work that we had been doing. So Steve, if you can speak a little bit more about the project's activity and what we have done over there, and then I will show some pictures so you will have a better view of what has been done.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Right, the Cheney run is in a pipe for most of its run, but there's a couple 1,000-foot open channel, direct channel, from the outfall that you saw in one of the pictures to Trail Creek. And the concept of this project was to slow down the stormwater discharge from the pipe outfall before it hits Trail Creek. And to do this project had weir control structures, a second channel. Right. Okay, so the second channel is much further downstream from the discharge pipe. The idea is to let the water spread out, slow down, have sediments settle out. The area that holds the water before it discharges was an existing wetland. It was a groundwater wetland. Parts of it were very high quality, by the way. To build the berms that we built, we dug micro pools, which turned out to be frog habitat, which was really a big deal because the year of construction, the mosquitoes were brutal out there. The second year after the micro pools got filled with frogs, the mosquitoes pretty much disappeared. Okay, so we had 9.45 acres of mostly pretty high quality wetlands that were enhanced with invasive species management. And we refer to recreational amenities in terms of the grant application. Our paved trail is actually a maintenance road in terms of grant funding, and it just happens to be a nice little recreational amenity.
So let me show you some pictures maybe. So that was prior to the constructions with lots of discolored discharge. We had lots of wooden debris all over. This was during constructions when we put the trails and the pathway. That is now the maintenance path, but it's also used for the resident. And this is how it looks today. Beautiful flooding forest with micro pool everywhere and nice native plants all over. This is the pathway. We also had the agri drain over there, and we put some flow monitor also in place. So the projects really achieve remarkable results, and I won't go through all of them here, but it was really a success for the stormwater part, but also, and that's the point of today's presentations about the recreational part of it. We had a maintenance plan that was done and created during the projects, and I did pass by a few weeks ago, and I observed that it's exceptionally well maintained by Michigan City Sanitary District. I mean, the site is perfect, and people are gathering around everywhere. In the sake of time, maybe I will proceed with the presentation and just try to speak about a little bit about the public engagement, because it was one of the most critical steps in the project. It was to involve the community. And I think our journey with Cheney is a great example of how the power of collaboration and vision in shaping the future of our green space. Because from the outset of the project, we recognize the importance of involving resident and neighbor in the planning process. So we did brought together various voices to envision what the possibility would look like at Cheney. So we have 3 visionary workshops, and that served as a launchpad for our community engagement effort. These workshops were held at various places, public gathering, and it allowed us to tap into the collective wisdom of the community. We designed 30% of the site and then went again for feedback sessions to gather more input from the resident. We conducted survey, we had communication materials that were crafted to ensure comprehensive input of everything. And then 2020, COVID happened. So we had to shift a little bit our approach, but we did organize some socially distanced volunteer events to treat and restore, for example, the pedestrian bridge that served as a crucial access to the site. The signage also was designed and installed. It was not only to showcase the financial support behind this project, it was also, I think, to serve as a tangible manner, a tangible reminder of our shared commitment with these projects. So this is the sign as it is today with the bridge. A picture of the volunteer event with volunteers, residents helping maintaining the entrance bridge. We had the ribbon cutting event that was a success, of course. And I think looking back at our journey, one of the crucial lessons that become apparent was the importance of presenting the project's outcome in a way that deeply connects with the public, because I mean, residents do care about stormwater, but they are not very much into stormwater management and water quality. But when you highlight recreational activities such as fishing, bird watching, hiking, then we did effectively engage a diverse range of stakeholders in the projects. And we did achieve the great outcome thanks to that. We won the Indiana Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence, Delta Institute and Michigan City Sanitary District, which was fantastic. And I think I will stop there because we are already 10 minutes on, but just to let you know that Delta continue to actively support the municipality, and we are collaborating with lots of municipality to do some green space. So if you have some plan, if you are willing to do some stuff, we are a nonprofit and we are here to support by all means. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Melina, I would just add that compare and contrast this outfall with the open pipe.
You think this is nicer, Steve?
I kind of do.
Okay, wonderful. I'm so happy we got to highlight that project, and people may have some questions about that. I do, but we will come back to question and answer time. We have one more round 2 presenter, and we're really happy to hear from Dr. Jonathan Day, Purdue faculty member, who will tell us about a research project. Jonathan, we've done a little bit of past and a little bit of present. Can't wrap this up without talking about the future. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Yep. And let me just share my screen with you. Okay. So I am delighted to be able to spend a little bit of time talking to you about this particular project. Tourism and Recreation was a part of the Indiana Climate Change Impacts Assessment that we completed a couple of years ago now, and looking at what the impacts of climate change will be on our recreation here in the state really was an important part of what we're doing. I'm going to give you the top line. I don't want to pretend to give any suggestions that I know what these changes are going to, the impact that these changes are going to have. I've got some thoughts on some of it, but I just really want to share with you the big picture issues that are coming down the pike as we live through this climate change process. So just moving to the next slide here. We did this activity as really a multidisciplinary assessment. And so the people who worked on this were climate, health, forest ecosystems. You know, there's a range of different reports that come out of this. I am neither a science person or a recreation person. I'm a tourism person. And so I really appreciate the previous speaker and talking about the role that tourism and recreation have in some of these issues. I just have to say that, you know, from a good practice point of view, the good work in engaging with communities that is being discussed in so many of these different presentations is just music to my ears, because it's such an important part of making sure that we have a sustainable industry. I wanted to share this one. You know, this is just giving you the context. You know, we know that you know, we just know, we know that the climate is changing. We've got a very good sense of that at this point. And so knowing that the world is changing, this study was really an important way for us to understand what does it mean for Indiana as we went forward. And here's the big picture. You know, the big picture is that Indiana is getting warmer. It's increased 1.2 Fahrenheit over the last century. It's going to continue and accelerate. And we believe that by mid-century, we're going to be about 5 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit of warming by mid-century. What that's going to mean is that there's going to be warming in all of our seasons. We're going to see more extreme heat and fewer mild days, and less extreme cold. And I'm going to come back and talk about what that means to recreation here in a minute, but let me keep going with the big picture here. For you as a group of people concerned with water, you know, it's important to understand that Indiana is getting wetter. Our annual precipitation is increasing. We've got less snow and more rain. And that is going to continue to happen. It's not distributed evenly across the whole year. Our winters are going to get wetter. Our springs are going to get wetter. But our summers and falls are likely to show declines in some of the water that we have. And so, you know, we can expect, particularly in the middle of summer, and I'll share with you some information on that here in a second, but particularly in the summer, we're going to be really needing to have more demand for water as we go. So what does it mean to tourism? The direct impacts are pretty predictable, right? I can share with you what our Purdue's climate scientists know about what's going to happen to the weather per se and to the climate. The challenge is that some of the indirect changes that will happen as a result of all this are going to be less predictable as we go. So let's focus on what is predictable.
How much for me paying? I don't know how much.
Okay, cool. Indiana is losing its best weather days. You may or may not know, but for most of us, the best weather is between 65 and 85 degrees. Those are the sorts of days that we can go out and really enjoy recreation without having any challenges with that. And we're losing those sorts of days. As we go, we're going to, by the middle of the century, we'll have 27 mild days in the year lost, and we'll have gained more hot and extreme days as we go through. This is going to have impacts for anyone who's outside. It's going to have impacts for anyone who's recreating as well. What's happening is that our shoulders are getting broader. And what we mean by that is that the shoulder season that was sort of the in-between winter and summertime is sort of pushing out a little bit. And so, I was interested, Gabby mentioned the recreation season earlier on. It may very well be that our recreation season becomes a little bit more extended than what we've had in the past. In addition to our best weather day, our shoulders going out, we're also seeing that summer heat is rising. And so, in the 20s, we're seeing more and more hot summer days. And my understanding is that they're predicting that this is going to be a scorcher of a year this year. By the 2080s, we're going to have a lot hotter extreme weather conditions, and these are sort of conditions where, you've got over 95 degrees, where it's just a little bit uncomfortable. Now, how different is that going to be? Well, it's going to be different from what we have now. It's going to be, if you wanted to put this in your mind, you might think of, Atlanta or Florida sort of weathers coming into an Indiana world. That's going to have some implications for it. We do a lot of stuff, particularly during the summers. My friend from Hamilton County was talking about the outdoor recreation that they have down there. We're going to have to think through what it means to have, these sporting and recreational areas that at a time when the temperature is rising and that sort of thing. We've seen some interesting stuff with, the increasing late May temperatures for the Indy 500. And we know that there have been times when people who are enjoying recreation, and I know this is not water recreation, but who are enjoying the recreation of going to the Indy are more and more being impacted by heat-related issues. We're going to get warmer and we're going to get wetter winters. So more rain, less snow, less ice. And for people who are concerned with outdoor recreation on the waterways, this is important information to sort of keep in mind. We will also have this reasonable, well, first of all, we will have more heavy rainfalls, particularly in that winter time that we're talking about. We need to be planning for water management and the possibility of flooding. And as I've shown you previously, we need to be thinking about heat waves and extended periods of time with hotter weather. There is some evidence that there is more likelihood for tornadoes as a result of this increasing temperatures across the state. Now, jury's still out a little bit on some of this, but one of the things that we need to be doing, a lot of these changes happen really slowly as we go through, but the possibility of extreme weather events where change happens very quickly and we need to be able to respond and be resilient to it is one of the important takeouts of some of this review. And so we've got all of that. And then, as I said before, we've got these indirect impacts that are less predictable. And so, you're right at the very center of that, in that, we know that the changing climate is going to have impacts on many of the things that have to do with outdoor recreation, whether it's increased whether it's changes in the type of fishing that's available in parts of Michigan, Lake Michigan, which we have already seen and had advice from some of the fishing folks up there that things are changing, all the way through to changes in our forest and natural areas. So understanding what those indirect impacts and thinking through, talking to and collaborating with our stakeholders as to what is changing in Indiana as we go through this next century is going to be an important part of that process. This is just the final, sort of thing to basically scare the living daylights out of all of us. This is what it looks like under the worst conditions. As you can see, the likelihood of increased temperature change across the country is pretty substantial. So what does it all mean? It means that some of our experiences will change. And it definitely means that we're going to have impacts for recreation workers, for people who are outdoor, for people who are at festivals and events that are working during the summer and the fall. We're really going to need to be paying attention to how we're supporting those people. There's been a lot of conversation about farm workers and what does the increase in temperatures mean to them. But for each of you, with people who are working in the outdoors in various different capacities, that's going to be one thing that we're going to need to be thinking about. And then, this is a slow moving issue for most people, right? And many people in the tourism industry, what they would do to adapt to these changes, they do on a day-to-day basis, right? We'll put out some more, shades or increase our air conditioning, or these minor little things that most small businesses are dealing with. There are more substantial changes that cities and towns are going to have to be thinking about. We're going to have some changes in the infrastructure that we need, for instance, around moorings and docks and that sort of thing. But the important thing is, and why I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you now, is that being aware of these changes coming down the track and starting now to plan and adapt is going to mean that we have the strongest, most resilient recreation and tourism industry going into the future. So thanks for that. That was a lot of information very quickly, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you about it. If you got any questions, let me know.
Jonathan, we're so grateful. That was a lot of information, and it was super interesting, and we really enjoyed it. There is a question for you, and I'll go ahead and start there, and then we'll maybe work around to some of the other presenters. But you have clearly said that part of what we have to do now is plan and adapt. And we have a question from Katherine about, do you know of any examples of places that seem to be doing that well?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things. One of the things, and Katherine, you're in a great position to see this. Quite often tourism, the decisions around tourism and that benefit tourism aren't made by tourism people. And so there are some destinations that are being thoughtful about what climate change is going to mean. But I think, two of the examples that I often use here in Indiana is that you're seeing forward-thinking cities and towns who are taking into account likely changes in, for instance, one that has come across my desk is this Elkhart Riverside Trail system. And basically what they're preparing for there is increased amount of flooding from the river. It's creating an opportunity for creating something that improves the quality of life for both residents and for tourists, because you've got this wonderful trail system. I think that's a good example of a tourism adaptation for climate change. And I understand that Origin Park down in Louisville, for those folks at the other end of the state, is also an example of the same sort of thing. So you're seeing communities, and when we think about tourism and recreation, quite often they intersect with so many other people who are making decisions. And so, for everyone who's on the presentation here, coming to the table and being prepared to think long term about what's happening, I think is really the important step in this process.
Super, thank you, Jonathan. And there undoubtedly will be other questions, but I'm also going to circle back to Steve and Melina for just a moment. And in the public outreach and public participation part that you engaged in for the Cheney Run project, it sounded as though, but I wanted to make sure I understood correctly, that recreation was a public priority. When you asked people about the project and when you engaged them in thinking about the project, it sounds like you didn't have to ask them would they like increased recreation, that they told you that what they wanted was increased recreation. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you did, Bill. I don't know if Steve is still on the call, but indeed, the project was not about recreational areas and amenities per se. It was really for the stormwater management point of view.
Right.
But when we gather all the residents and all the neighbors from this site, the main concern was, how can I access this site after? And how can I use and continue to be able to fish, watch birds, and do whatever I want to do in my neighborhood? So that was a really key lessons learned for us. And that's how we ended up doing this pathway that were accessible to everyone too.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I love about the project is this is a case where it wasn't a previously recreational place that got spoiled and then was restored. This was a project, as you said, that was really undertaken for other purposes. You had flooding, you had debris damage, you had things like that were going on in this piped stream. And what you did was actually increased the recreation opportunities rather than rescuing something that had been harmed before. Is that the case?
Totally correct. It was a dump site, more or less, prior to that, causing lots of pollutions, and that was the main goal at the beginning. But then it became an open site for everyone, which is a great input for Michigan City.
And it's awesome to have positive examples like that. Katherine, when you guys think about this along the stretch of the river through Hamilton County, and obviously with your partners in Marion County too, are you guys also thinking about sites where there are opportunities not just to draw people's attention to the recreation possibilities that are there, but to actually enhance, increase, and expand them?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely on the minds of tourism, but also on the minds, kind of like Jonathan said, that like cities are really stepping up as well. So the example that comes to mind just briefly is Fishers has taken over, has gotten a chunk of land between 96th and 106th Street. And their plan is to mitigate that. I forget all the issues that it has currently. I'd have to go back and check. But basically to restore the habitat there, restore wetlands in that area, but also create trails and pathways so that it can be a functional park for people, but also like we were just saying with this Michigan City example, that it's going to provide a lot of ecosystem services through restoring a wetland right on that busy corridor. So that's one example, but yes, it's definitely on the minds of people. And recently, the White River Technical Committee was actually just created that is now housed within CERTA, the Regional Development Authority for Central Indiana. And that has leaders and representatives from the cities up and down the river in these two counties. So they can come together and start thinking about that kind of dual use and overlap of how do we address multiple issues at once, especially in the face of changing weather?
Outstanding.
Did I answer that question well enough?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You did for me. Thank you very much. And Jonathan, I see you want to add
Yeah,
something,
I
but
just
while
want
you
to
add, I also just want to ask, more shade, more shade, more shade. Do I understand that correctly?
well, for small businesses, you know, if I'm a restaurateur, right? How do I adapt to a hotter summer? That's what's going to
Right.
happen, right? But if I'm a city or a municipality, I've got a whole different set of things to think. And this is one of the reasons why it's hard to it's hard to get the attention of some small businesses because their adaptations aren't that great, right? They don't have to, you know, they need to be thinking about, you know, what would happen if I had a disastrous extreme weather event and am I insured in the appropriate way and those sorts of things. But the day-to-day changes for small businesses aren't necessarily that great. But I want to come back to what Katherine was talking about. And, you know, I know that there are people on this call who are from all different sorts of businesses and government organizations. And I just really want to commend the folks down in Hamilton County because, you know, for so many of our small towns, we rely on tourism and visitors. So maybe not overnight tourists, but visitors who come in and spend money and improve the economic conditions of the city. And to actually have the tourism folks at the table adding value. And as you can see, you know, the tourism folks are adding value. They're communicating, they're enhancing, they're bringing together new products that wouldn't have otherwise happened by bringing them into this collaborative process. So there's not just the water guys sitting around talking to the other water guys and, you know, or the water guys talking to the, you know, Lord Mayor. And my Australians coming out there to the mayor. You know, that you have a group of people who have different perspectives and can all be working towards better outcomes for the whole community. I think, you know, give tourism a seat at the table where you can, because it's an important contribution.
Thank you. That's a great point. And really appreciate Sarah adding this, you know, adaptation comes in all kinds of forms, including if you're going to have parts of our summer where the flows in our streams are lower because of increased temperature, that you may have to adjust how many people you can put on a float. And there may be all kinds of, and Jonathan, just one other shout out. I really appreciate you mentioning employees, workers. You know, it's one thing for us to want to build up a recreation or strengthen the recreational sector of the economy and that aspect of our quality of life. But we have to be mindful that every one of those recreational opportunities involves somebody being outdoors to facilitate it. And that is not going to be more comfortable. That is going to be more dangerous in the future.
And so, you know, the reality check of what it's going to be like working outside at the Indiana State Fair or, you know, the Indy 500 or some of the great festivals that we have by our waterways is just something to keep in mind.
As we wind down the next couple of minutes, Jill, did you want to add a few words to help us wrap up? And then I'll ask the same of Lynn.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. I was going to just drop this in the chat, but then I thought I might have a chance to hop back on here for just a minute. Was really interesting about this forum is to watch the intersection of a lot of our topics that we try to cover at the Water Summit. As you guys are all talking about water recreation, I'm sitting here on the shores of Fish Lake, and I love to paddle. And I'm just thinking about, you know, the water quality issues we talked about at the first part of this, and these quantity issues are also going to continue to be a challenge. So one of our main goals with keeping these conversations going year round is to make sure that we're making the appropriate intersections between, you know, recreation management and water management itself, whether that's quality or quantity. And so I just encourage all of you to stay engaged with the work we're doing with the Indiana Water Summit as we keep pushing toward regional planning and regional thinking around our water resources. It's going to become more critical in the future if we want water in those resources in the summertime when it's hot to play in and enjoy. The management of stormwater, floodwaters, the management of major users, all that kind of stuff has to be part of these conversations. So I guess I'll just leave you with those big picture thoughts, and hope that we can continue to cultivate this community that's on this call alongside the other water community professionals and citizens, and work toward a more sustainable system. Thanks for being here, everybody. We're really excited about the summit this year as we keep pushing ahead on its roadmap. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Lynn, and thank her for her partnership with Purdue for putting these on and keeping these things moving forward in conversation.
Great. Thank you all very much. And I just wanted to point out, I really appreciate Jonathan's reference back to the Indiana Climate Impacts Assessment. Those are currently managed by us at ISS, kind of taking those over, and we are looking to keep those updated in the upcoming years. So I encourage you to look at those resources and on our YouTube page, and we look forward to engaging with you all at the Water Summit in this fall. I think there was some PFAS work in our future, and we'll be pushing that out later this year. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.